So, Fender recently announced that they are releasing a new Joe Strummer signature guitar. Now, the comments on the videos seems to be leaning towards the fact that this is sort of shady. Some people even saying things like, it's a bad omen. Now, first of all, if you like the guitar, you like the guitar. If you don't like the guitar, you don't like the guitar. It's okay to like the guitar if you are a fan of Joe Strummer and you wanna have a guitar that reminds you of all the great music he's done and inspires you to maybe make your own great music. And if you are a fan of Joe Strummer and The Clash, and you don't feel like this guitar is not a good representation of what he stood for, and you feel like it's kind of a shady thing to release a signature guitar of a dead man, then I understand that as well. And I think as long as we don't are mean to each other and fight among ourselves, it's okay. We don't necessarily need a signature guitar of Joe Strummer, I think, but also it could be kind of cool to have one. It's a made in Mexico Stratocaster, but it's also supposed to be a very close resemblance of a actual 1966 Telecaster, so maybe there are some merits to it both ways. Mexico-made Fender is supposed to be a more budget-friendly alternative, and this is definitely not a budget-friendly guitar. On the other hand, it's supposedly very close to something more expensive, closer maybe even to something like a custom shop relic guitar, but not as expensive. So price-wise, they're trying to hit two different markets at once with something in between. And I can't really fault them for trying, but on one hand I do feel like they're sort of missing the bigger picture, which is that this has to do with the people who love The Clash and Joe Strummer. And if you're going with, which I think maybe you should if you are doing a guitar that is based on someone else's guitar, because I mean, let's face it, at the end of the day this is not a Fender Telecaster, this is supposed to be a Joe Strummer, which might mean something else if you are actually someone who loves the music. And maybe that should be taken into account when you're dealing with the people you're actually trying to market this towards, which is the fans of Joe Strummer. Now, I have listened to The Clash my entire life. It's one of the first bands I ever got into, The Clash, and it was because of my dad, who is a big The Clash fan. And so, to me, the music means a lot. Not just the music itself, but also my relation to my father and the music that I grew up with. A lot of memories and feelings and emotions from childhood. And so, I want to try to find a positive way we can look at this. And this is the way I'm gonna look at this. And you can do it in the same way as me, or add your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to talk to you guys about how you are gonna approach this new guitar that Fender is releasing. If you don't know, Joe Strummer passed away in December the 22nd of 2002, which is very close to being 20 years away. And so it's not that weird that we're getting a new guitar, because it's getting close to be 20 years, and Fender is probably aware of this. You don't need to do that much research to know this. I mean, Google his name and it will show. I think that what they should have done is not this guitar. I personally think that it looked really rubbish. That's my opinion. You do not have to share it at all. And if you think I'm wrong, write comments below telling me so. But I have reliced a lot of guitars now, more than you've seen on the channel. And I've looked at a lot of old guitars and some old guitars and I've studied them. And I can tell you that this is not up to standard. This is not good enough for a relic job. I've done better relic jobs on guitars and been told that they're not good enough, so I wouldn't say that this is good enough. Especially if you look at the pickguard, you can see that it does not look anything like what a pickguard that has its spray painted color pulled off would look like. The history behind the guitar is very basic. Joe Strummer had this sunburst Stratocaster and he didn't like sunburst, so he painted it grey with primer and then black, and he spray painted over the pickguard and basically over everything. He didn't take the guitar apart because that's not punk. Punk is putting a lot of finish on and hoping for the best. I've even heard that he didn't take off the strings and didn't mask off anything, and that's why the electronics and things like that look rusty, not because they were rusty, but because he didn't care too much about the guitar, basically. Now, there are always, different kinds of stories out there, but that's what I've heard and what I've seen from looking into it. And that's why the guitar is sunburst, and then there is grey over it, and then there is black over it. And the same thing goes for the pickguard. It's white pickguard with grey primer over and black over it, and through playing it has worn off. So the body looks the way it does because of the wear, and it's gotten down to the sunburst on some places, and some places it hasn't. So you have a mix of those three colors, and somewhere it's even down to the wood. But if you look especially at the pickguard, you can see that it looks a lot more like some sort of stencil or print than it looks like actual wear. Now, I would have, if I were the one to release this guitar, I would have released a new guitar, and I wouldn't have bothered relicking it. I would have made a 1966 Stratocaster copy as close as I could, and then I would have made it a new guitar, and I would have just had it be three colors. So as you played, you wore it down naturally. Now, if you've been subscribed to my channel more than a week, you know that I love relic guitars, but I feel like this is one of those areas where you shouldn't do a relic guitar, because I think Joe Strummer would have preferred us to have a new guitar and let it be ourselves who are being creative and are relicking. Obviously, and this is very important, I do not speak for him, neither do anyone else, and neither does Fender. But anyway, I would have made a nice new guitar that just had a nitro finish, and I would have tried to find a way to make it as inexpensive as I could, maybe even make it a Squire guitar, actually. I would have also used the opportunity to put forward something that was actually something he cared about, like for example a charity or some sort of cause that resembled something that Joe Strummer was actually interested in and cared about while he was still with us, instead of making this just a sort of, I don't know, painting to hang on your wall kind of deal. Now, these are obviously, again, what I think and feel about this, and if you think I'm wrong, talk to me. But I feel like this guitar is very much something that you hang on your wall to pretend like you have Joe Strummer's guitar. So what can we do? Well, this is my idea, because instead of focusing on Fender and giving them more spotlight than maybe they deserve, because at the end of the day, what have they really done? They've copied someone else's guitar and they've made something that isn't quite that interesting in either way. What we can do is we can try to think back at what punk really means and what it really is and why we love it and care about it, and see where we can go from there. So this is my idea. I'm going to share with you guys my personal Joe Strummer guitar. It's hanging right behind me here, and it's one of my favorite guitars, which is something I say about all my guitars. But anyway, there are very inexpensive guitars. For example, Harley Benton has some Sunburst Telecasters that you can get for not that much. And there are other companies that create them. It's kind of hard to find a Sunburst inexpensive guitar if you're left-handed, but there definitely are options out there. And also, don't go too much into the detail of having a Sunburst Stratocaster as a base. So the first step is acquiring a Telecaster that is Sunburst, if you care enough, which you can see on my guitar, I did not. But we'll get to that pretty soon. This is my first option. Acquiring a Sunburst Stratocaster, taking it all apart, removing all the screws and the pickups and things like that, and then lightly scuffing up the paint of the body, not removing it, but just enough so that a primer, a grey primer, can be applied. It should take maybe with a machine a couple of minutes, maybe 3 minutes, to sand the guitar body to get to the point where primer will attach. And you can use something like 800 or 1000 grit sandpaper. You do not need to go further than that, and especially since we're in the spirit of punk, don't do this too much to perfection. Obviously we all want nice guitars, but there is a difference between a nice guitar and a punk nice guitar, or something like that, if you get my drift. And after you've primed it and let it dry, you spray paint it black. And you can spray paint it with anything you want. It can be aerosol spray cans, it can be really nice expensive poly, it can be some even more expensive, even nicer nitrocellulose lacquer. You go the way you want to go with it, but remember, we're punks. And after that, you clear coat the guitar and make sure that the clear coat matches the same kind of black spray paint you bought. So maybe buy them at the same time, make sure that's the same brand. And after that, you lightly sand the guitar with 12,000 grit sandpaper to make it all matte, and then you buff it. You buy your buffer from the same place you buy your parts for your car, so you get some sort of automotive car buffer compound, and then you can use either a rag or a sponge and a drill. Doesn't really matter. Just make sure you put some elbow grease into it and buff it out. Once you're happy, you assemble the guitar again, put on some strings, and you can play the guitar, and you can relic it or let it wear naturally, it doesn't matter, and make it look the way you want. You can do the exact same thing to the pickguard if you have a white pickguard. Just paint it with grey primer and paint it then with black paint. Doesn't matter. You can also just leave it white if you wanna, or buy a black pickguard. Again, it's your guitar. We're not going to go completely Joe Strummer on this because I don't think he would have wanted you to do that. So that leads into the next part, the pickups. You don't need a 1966 Stratocaster, and you do not need the pickups. Get the pickups that speaks to you and your music and your style of playing and the kind of music you want to do, because that's what Joe Strummer would have wanted for you. He was most likely not a person that would love to be copied. He was probably more into the idea of making people play their own thing and making their own thing, just like he did his own thing. And that's why my guitar is not an exact copy of his guitar. So this is my Joe Strummer Telecaster. This is the way it looks. And it is sort of relict, but that's because I got really drunk one night about 10 years ago. And I had this idea that I needed to make the body match the neck a little bit more. And we're going to look a little bit closer at the neck in a couple of seconds, and you'll probably realize why I'm saying that. Anyway, the neck has a sort of rustic look to it, or at least that's how I feel about it. And so I felt that the body needed some relicking, and one night I got a little bit more, let's say, poisoned than maybe is good for me. And so I decided to just go out into the street and relic the guitar, and it ended up looking like this. I then had this side here be so damaged that when I played, I actually cut my arm. I've said this in another video earlier. And so I took a planer and I made it all nice and smooth here, so that when I played, I wouldn't hurt myself. But as you can see on the back, for example, it is rather beaten up. And it is both good and a bad thing. I think it isn't a super smart thing to do, and maybe I wouldn't have done it today if I could change things around. I don't know, but I like the guitar. I also burned in Joe because that's the name of the guitar, and I really like it. This guitar has the Fender no-caster pickups, and they are really nice sounding guitars, and I really like them. The electronics are just a standard 3-way switch and a volume and a tone. Nothing special there. On the neck, which I don't know if you can see, it looks pretty rustic. It has a gunstock oil finish, and I've burnt in this Joe Strummer tribute silhouette thing that I did. And on the back of the head here, I also have written, which I hope I can show you, that this guitar is in loving memory of Joe Strummer. And then it says 2012 to 22nd of December, which was 10 years ago. So this was my tribute to him 10 years ago. And I was planning on actually making something similar to the guitar that Fender is now releasing and having it done somewhere around December to honor him, basically. But I looked at the videos they made, and it was sort of encouraging me to go a different way and making this video instead. And maybe I'll make something more about Joe Strummer later down the line. I don't know. But it will probably not be to celebrate his death, but maybe his life, or his music, or the love I have for him, because he's been important to me my entire life. So, what I'd like to see, and you can leave me comments if you do this, is tribute guitars to Joe Strummer, but maybe not Fender. Maybe you taking a Telecaster and somehow making it your own, but also somehow his, and finding a blend in between being, remembering him, but also, honoring him by being creative and expressing yourself. Because I think that's what he would have wanted, and not just plain copying him. Again, these are just my opinions and my view of the thing, and I hope you can find something fun and interesting in it, because building a tribute guitar is actually kind of fun. I've already done one from Johnny Marr. He's, of course, still with us, and will hopefully be so for a long time. But I do have a green Telecaster as a tribute to him and the music he did with the Smiths. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed these videos and that you like them, and that you will do something special and interesting to honor Joe Strummer and making a guitar that lets you be inspired and make cool and awesome music. And I hope you will do this, and let me know in the comments below that you're doing it, and maybe sharing a video or something of the crazy your version of a Joe Strummer guitar, because I think that a DIY project would be much more suited to honor him than paying Fender a bunch of money. They get enough money either way from all the other guitars they're making. They don't need to capitalize on Joe Strummer's name. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you will share your thoughts and feelings about Joe Strummer and his music, and also what you think about the new guitar from Fender in the comments below with me. Until next time, stay awesome and cool, and go and listen to The Clash, because, I mean, let's face it, they were the greatest punk band ever.